Hi guys, welcome to Counterpoints. My name's Connor. I'm a science fiction, politics, and philosophy nerd, a Marine Corps and law enforcement veteran, and I would argue a real Republican, meaning that I actually have Republican values from about a decade ago, and I would argue that MAGA doesn't, but that's a story for a different day. Today we're going to be watching Nick the Knife Fuentes, a Christian nationalist, dissident, right-wing freak, talking to Tucker Carlson, who has moved on from Fox News in order to be Qatar's best boy. And what I mean by that is he's paid off by Gulf countries. He's paid off by Arab Gulf countries to hate the state of Israel. That's my summary anyways. I also think he's like a schizo conspiracy theorist, but you know, we'll get into that as we get into the content. Let's go ahead and bring up these bad boys. They sat down and had a conversation. This is effectively the schizo far right having a conversation with itself. We'll break it down intermittently. Let's go.
Nick Fuentes, thank you for doing this.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I wanted to meet you. I've heard about you.
I've heard about you.
So, well, thank you. I want to understand what you believe, and I want to give you a chance in a minute to just lay it out, not what you're pivoting against, which are a lot of the same thing. You know, I agree with you on some of the things you're pivoting against for sure, but what do you affirmatively believe? So I just want to stand back and let you explain it. But first I want to understand how you got to where you are, how you became Nick Fuentes. So this is my understanding of your life.
AF Racing says, what about Pixie sending her vids to a streamer e-girl? You said something more rude. Tell me more.
Arc, and tell me if I'm wrong. You show up at Boston University. You grew up in a suburb of Chicago, kind of working class, western suburb, and you show up at Boston University in the fall of 2016 at the height of the battle between Trump and Hillary. It's like this kind of pivot point in history. And you show up with a MAGA hat, and you have a Trump hat, and you have like basically off the shelf Republican views.
Yes.
And so describe what the views that you
I don't think that's true, but that's okay.
had then, and then describe what happened.
Sorry. We're getting into the content. I'm just going to call baloney that Nick was just this cutesy ooh-woo, normie Republican. What's funny, though, is I think in his own intro, or people will do it in a clip compilation. There's like a 2016 Nick Fuentes back when he was sweet and innocent. And he was like, get out of here, Trump. We don't need the sexism or the racism or the bigotry. There's actually like a cute clip of Nick Fuentes before he went like full Christian nationalist dissident right saying that shit. But AF Racing says, why are you speculating on his sex life? That's gay. Sorry, if you make your sex life a broad part of your public persona, it's going to get commented on. I do not accept the, I get to hang out with schizo Nazi e-whores who cut themselves and you can't say anything about it. That's bullshit. That's DGG cope. Anyways.
Yeah, so when I was in high school, I was very political. I was reading a lot of the libertarian stuff, Austrian school, Chicago school, economic type literature, because that's what was popular at the time. If you went online in the early 2010s, that's all the conservative
Thanks, Justin.
content there really was. That was the most extremely online type
Libertarian
stuff.
economics.
Well, basically kind of the remnant of the Ron Paul revolution.
Yes.
The Young Americans for Liberty, PragerU, which kind of skews a little more, I guess, conservative, but very basic small government, individualism, libertarian type stuff.
So you watch PragerU videos?
Oh, yeah. I was in the Prager Force.
What's that?
It's a Facebook group for college kids, and they promote the PragerU videos.
Wow.
To the college students and high school
So you really
students.
were a product of the moment.
Absolutely.
And how'd you feel about Trump?
Well, initially, I didn't like Trump. When the primary started in 2015, I considered him to be a statist.
Yeah.
Which sounds so ridiculous now.
No, a lot of people thought that.
Yeah. And I was a libertarian, so I saw him as a big government, 1990s liberal. When he was asked about healthcare, he said, well, we'll take care of everybody. And I said, I'm a Rand Paul guy, Ted Cruz guy. Those were kind of my people back in 2015.
You like Ted Cruz?
I was a cruise missile.
Does Cruz know that?
I don't think so, no. I was actually on his campaign.
You were on the Ted Cruz campaign?
I don't know if I was on the campaign, but I door knocked in a little village in Chicago, in McKinley Park, for Ted Cruz.
No way.
In the Illinois primary.
Did he write you a thank you note?
No, I didn't get a thank you.
Christian Blair says, am I going to watch Drew Pavlou versus Lonerbox? Honestly, man, I checked out that content, and it was basically Drew Pavlou saying hey man, you know, the left has lost its freaking mind and mass immigration from Muslim societies are going to destroy the West. And Loanerbox is like, no. And then that's it. That's the conversation. So, I mean, if you want me to check it out, you know, obviously you've done some massive super chats, bro. Like if you think it's worth content, if there's some, if there's something good in there, especially if you're like, hey, the second half gets better, I'll check it out. But truth be told, meh, meh. I've heard I've heard those arguments from both sides. I think Loanerbox is a little bit too sweepy, and I think Drew Pavlu was a little bit too alarmed. So if I could split the perspective, honestly, I would be right in the middle of Loanerbox and Drew Pavlu as far as like Muslim immigration to the Western world. When it comes to this, just because a bunch of DGG was complaining that I wasn't commenting on the actual video, the comment so far is, okay, Nick was a normie conservative or Republican, and then he got radicalized on the internet. So I want to see what the radicalization process was. I want to see what motivated him to go far right. Now, my cynical criticism is that he wanted attention. He wanted to break out from the crowd. He didn't want to be saying the same talking points that everybody else was. He didn't want to be a shill. He wanted to carve out and blaze his own path. And he blazed his own path, by the way. However, if you blaze a path in a bad direction, that's not good, right?
He lost, so I guess.
Yeah, he did in a very humiliating way. Wow, that's amazing. So what happened?
So I, like everybody else in 2016, went through this ideological awakening. And first I shifted to Trump. And the first realization that I had is it started in 2016, actually, because the primaries, started in 15, around April or May, I think, the first announcements. And I had very negative feelings about Trump. And like I said, pro Rand Paul, pro Cruz. But when the actual Iowa caucus happened and the primaries began, I saw that Trump was dominating. And every night in the Super Tuesday, when they had all the big contests, one after the other, I remember the media was furious that he was winning one after the other. And I remember thinking to myself, like, structurally, if I'm a libertarian or a conservative and we want to change the country, we have to win elections. If you want to win elections, you have to bypass the media. I sort of had this realization that the media was really standing in the way. They were the problem. And I had this realization that all the conservatives and Republicans up to that point were afraid to take on the media. They, like Mitt Romney, would cower before them and were so apologetic and so weak. And so initially I said, I actually don't ideologically agree with Trump at all, but he will destroy the liberal media, or at least their monopoly on thought and opinion.
Yes.
And then a breakthrough can occur. So that was kind of the first hump. And I said, I could get behind Trump because he's a winner. He'll win for our side. And that was kind of the first big thing. And then as I listened to him more and more, his speeches and his rhetoric, I started to think about immigration.
Which you hadn't really considered before?
Never. And the reason why is because I was from a 95% white suburb. So the diversity had not really reached my corner of Chicago yet. Me and my family, not so much my family, they grew up in the city, but growing up in the suburbs, I was insulated from that. So it was just not even, it's actually, you're going to love this. I don't know if I've ever even said this on an interview before. I was listening to Mark Levin's show. This goes to show how normie I was.
Actually?
I listen to him every day.
You listen to Mark Levin every day?
In high school, yes.
Wow.
I was a fan. I loved the show. And I actually liked how he was kind of obnoxious and mean to his callers. Yeah. Vicious. And I liked that. I thought that was funny. But I'll never forget one show. He goes live and he says, America's becoming a majority non-white country. Does anybody think that's a good idea? And I was thinking to myself, yeah, that actually doesn't sound so good. I didn't really even think that America's becoming majority minority like that.
Wait, so you were radicalized on race by Mark Levin?
Yes.
Are you making that up? That's
a real story.
That's kind of funny. That a normie conservative was like, oh, mass immigration, we're going to be majority minority. All right. That inspires another drawing. Okay. What percentage of Latin America is white Hispanic? Okay. Google white Hispanic statistics. Because Hispanic, for the uninitiated, because I was actually, size of the population, out of 62 million Hispanics in the United States, 12 million or 20% identified as white alone. Shift in racial identity, the percentages of majority decreased from 2010 when about 53% of Latinos identified their race as white alone. The change is partly due to updates in how the Census Bureau asks about racial identity. So if I was to read into this, I would say it's like split half and half. And what I mean by that is let's look at a Puerto Rican, okay? I know this is silly. I know it's racist. But if you go to a house party and I don't know, this guy is talking to you about Star Wars, you know, he's talking to you about his Funko Pop collection, then you'll be like, oh, that's like a white guy, right? Even if he's from Puerto Rico, even if he's from a Hispanic society. If this guy talks to you about, I don't know, EDM music or something, you're gonna be like, oh, that's a white guy, right? However, if he's like, oh, you know, I'm hanging out with my Hispanic family, blah, 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 blah. Same thing with this guy. If this guy was like, you know, not that he would be white, because if you look at your screen, this is obviously a African descended Puerto Rican guy. But at the same time, like Hispanic is like this category that's not even racial. It's like culturally and linguistic. It's descendant from the colonization project of Spain. And so Spain and Portugal is obviously different. But if you look at, hopefully my safe search is on, but if you look at Brazilian women, okay, they're going to be a mix of white and Afro-Caribbean features. So my whole point is that like Hispanic or Portuguese, they're going to be a mix of features. They're not going to be uniquely white or uniquely black. And so that's where, for me, maybe I'm being a little bit racist to myself, I guess. But I don't think that we need to have this delineation between the English colonial project and the Spanish colonial project. They're both European descendant colonial projects with multiracial aspects. Why do we have to divide ourselves cleanly between Hispanics and Anglo colonial projects? It just seems like a antagonistic tribalism that doesn't need to exist.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm. He planted the seed at least. And then I saw a graphic on 4chan or Twitter, and I'm sure you've seen something similar. It said, this is what the map looks like, the electoral map. If only men vote, if only women vote, if only whites vote, if only non-whites vote. And it became very obvious what the electoral problem is. It's demographics. These immigrants are coming here. They're going to turn Texas blue like they turned California blue.
Yeah, I saw it happen.
Yeah. And, you know, you look at even the opinion polls. These people don't believe in free speech. They don't believe in the Constitution, the Second Amendment. As a libertarian, the things that are, and as American, things that are important to you, they don't believe, they don't understand these things. And so I said, that's another political obstacle. You've got the media, you've got immigration.
Grassroots returned another 20. Says, still maintain that the closest I've come to death was my ex finding me polishing an exhaust in our bathtub. She was more patient than I had the right to ask for. Yeah, dude. And be careful. You know, like white women will get mad at you and they'll get vindictive and they'll talk shit to you. If you're dating a Hispanic chick, she'll actually just straight up grab some cookware and fucking hit you with it.
So I'm thinking like, well, we're going to vote for Ted Cruz. He's going to be the constitutionalist. We'll vote for Rand Paul. He'll be the libertarian. But what stands in the way of political power for us? It's the media and it's immigration. So I said, well, we got to get Trump to beat the media, build the wall, deport the illegals. And once we set the country straight, then we can actually have our constitutional republic back. That was kind of the idea. And that's the mindset that I had going into college.
Amazing. So then what happened?
So I go to college and I'm just, at that point, a huge Trump supporter. And you got to understand, for me, for my generation, so I was 18. I turned 18 in August 2016. And to us,
That's
Trump...
amazing.
Yeah. Well, because we're like the first generation that was influenced by Trump coming of age in that moment.
No, I say it's amazing because when you're living in something, you don't appreciate its full significance. But to be 18 in August of 2016, so this really is, as you're forming your views and really yourself.
Yes.
In the middle of this.
We'll admit that we are not the most disciplined snackers. When the pantry calls, we answer. It can be cruel, but what if there was a way to snack like you want to snack and not deal with the consequences, heaviness?
No one's going for it. I know what you're supposed to. So I went to Boston.
If you don't feel like ordering online, stop at your local Sprouts.
So I went to Boston University. I got on campus in September, and I was wearing my MAGA hat everywhere, in the dining hall, walking down the street, and it's a city campus. So you're walking down Commonwealth Avenue, and you know, you're in the city of Boston, which is super liberal. And at that time, it's different than it was now. People were getting fired for wearing MAGA hats. People were getting punched in the face. It was like being a Trump supporter it was out there actually back then. It was controversial. It was controversial everywhere, not even, you know, just in liberal Boston. But so I was wearing my hat everywhere and I was just getting accosted constantly. in the dining hall, people come up and yell in my face. Some black girl in a hijab ran up to me and said, you know what you're supporting? You're racist. This. And I'm trying to get my pizza. I'm trying to get my oatmeal or whatever at the dining hall. This was happening constantly. And so I was going then on Twitter, and I had a small Twitter account with my real name and face, and I had, maybe 200 followers, and I'm posting about my experiences. And I caught the attention of a lot of people on campus for wearing the hat, for posting on Twitter, and they found my Twitter.
You've only been there like a month?
Less, weeks, maybe 3 weeks. This is starting to kick up. And I catch the attention of my peers, and they start going at me on Twitter and giving me death threats. We're going to kill you. How dare you? If I see you, I'm going to beat your ass, that kind of thing. And this was my first experience with this. Now we're all kind of desensitized to it, but that was my first run-in with this intensity from the left. So I filed a police report. I get real nervous. And, when you're a student, you can't really avoid other people. You're in a dorm room. Exactly. You're in so you're vulnerable. And anyway, long story short, so one of these guys from the campus libertarian group, Young Americans for Liberty, he reaches out to me and says, hey, I'm not going to say his name, but he goes, I go to a school in Boston. I'm from YAL. He said, and I'd like to set up a debate with you and one of these people that's been giving you a hard time on campus because they were doing a lot of events. He said, is that something you're interested in? I said, absolutely. And so he goes around and he asks some of the bigger people that are antagonizing me on Twitter, and everybody says no. And he goes, yeah, no one's going for it. I said, well, can you try again? Can you? And so he finds one guy, and it turns out to be the student body president of the whole university.
It'll be you.
Yeah, the senior, this liberal douchebag progressive. And he's the student body president of the student government there. And so we set up the debate. It was about a week before the actual elections. I think it was end of October, beginning of November. And they hold it in this auditorium in the center of the campus, and like 300 people show up. So it turns into like this huge, and they're all liberal. They all hate my guts. They're heckling me the whole time. They're yelling at me. We do this debate about Trump versus Hillary. And so I'm there and I'm pro-Trump, and I say, I think Trump's going to win. And I'm straight up like ripping the Ben Shapiro talking points. I'm saying, it's got everything to do with culture and nothing to do with race, and diversity is a problem and all this. And I decisively win the debate. It's like not even close. The debate wraps up, and this girl who I think I talked to her on Twitter once or twice comes running up to the stage after the debate, and it's Cassie Dillon. And at this time, she's a fellow at Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro's company. And like I said, I barely knew her. And she comes running up and she says, oh my gosh, I live streamed this debate on Periscope on Twitter. She said, and 30,000 people watched it, and you have like 5 job offers. You did incredible. I said, wow, I don't know what to say. That's great. She goes,
you're 18 years old.
Yes. So it's like happening very quickly for me,
What I find interesting about this, just to do a little bit of transformative commentary, is Nick, as much as I criticize his political movement, as much as I have strong distaste for Christian nationalism, Christian theocracy, Christian imperium, which him and I have actually discussed, as much as I think that he's radicalized tens of thousands of young kids to be like black-pilled antisocial freaks, he did have an opportunity to be a normie. He could have just shut his mouth, gone with Cassie Dillon, gone with Daily Wire, kissed the ring of Ben Shapiro, kissed the ring of Dennis Prager, and been a relatively speaking, like he could have been the young Tucker Carlson. He could have been like the household name commentary guy who just happened to be a Zoomer. But instead, he said, fuck you, fuck Israel, fuck the Jews, fuck all this like, racial sensitivity. And so that kind of blazed his own path. But like I said, if you're blazing your path is respectable in that it's a harder path to do. That's what's respectable about blazing a path. But if you blaze a path off of a fucking cliff, that's a problem. And so that's my criticism of Nick. It's not whether or not he's smart. It's not whether or not he's articulate. It's not whether or not he's capable of understanding complex ideas. That's none of my criticisms of Nick. My criticisms of Nick are he is blazing a path in the wrong direction, which is effectively anti-constitutionalism, race realism, anti-Semitism, anti-capitalism. I think that if we talked about fascism, he would probably just bite on half of the bullets that I presented, where I'm like, this is going to destroy our constitutional republic. And he'd be like, yeah, but fuck it, we would win.
And she goes, do you want to do a post-game interview after the debate? I said, sure. And so she asked me about how I thought the debate went and what my views are and things like that. And, very normal stuff. And then at the end, she says, I just got back from doing study abroad in Israel. She goes, and it was amazing. Would you ever take a trip to Israel? And I said, no, I think I got everything I need right here in America. And she goes, oh, okay. And she wraps up the interview. And that was a little bit of foreshadowing. And this begins a relationship, not a romantic relationship, but we become friends and we start talking. And she's plugged in, like I said, a Daily Wire. She's talking to people at Right Side Broadcasting Network, the college Republicans. I start to develop this friendship with her. And over time, she lands me the show on Right Side Broadcasting Network. And in this time, I'm really starting to lean into America first. I'm becoming more pro-Trump as time goes on. And what really stood out to me was Trump's inaugural address in January 17th. So this was just a couple months later. And in Trump's inaugural, he says famously, a new vision will govern our land. It's going to be only America first, America first. And I said, that's me. Like, that's what I believe. I'm an American nationalist.
Me too.
Fully at this point, not even a conservative. And there was one thing that happened just before that that really struck me as strange. And I've told this story before. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but suffice to say, Barack Obama in the lame duck period. So the Democrats lost the election. He's on his way out.
Okay. I want to share something with you that's kind of changed the way that I conceptualize something, because I actually could not differentiate the nation state. For people have explained it. I genuinely did not understand it. A libertarian tried to explain it to me like years ago, but I think this is important. So a nation or territory considered as an organized political community under one government. So what frustrated me about this definition, I was like, okay, hold on. A nation or territory, a nation is the people, and then organized political community under one government. Well, there's no real divorce between the definition of nation and the definition of state. So I really did not understand the way that people were using it. But nation, a country considered as a body of people united by common descent, history, culture, or language, inhabiting a particular area of territory. I think the way that a lot of people use it, though, is that they differentiate between the nation, which is the body of people, and the state. And I'll explain my other drawing in a second as well. So the state is a state apparatus. So it's the presidency, the judiciary, the legislature, excuse me, the executive body, the executive administrations, bureaucracy, technocracy. It's all of those things that are representative of the nation in politics. However, the nation itself, I think the way that a lot of people use it is the people. And I think what frustrates me about Nick and a lot of other people who are in the America First movement is that they draw a delineation around who is in the nation. So they'll say, oh, well, you know what? Foundational Black Americans are part of the American nation because they were brought here as slaves. So even if Black people, African Americans commit a disproportionate amount of crime, they are still part of the American stock, and therefore they are deserving of political consideration. And you'll actually see this weird political marriage between Black nationalists and white supremacists and race realists, where they say, like, okay, we're a part of the same nation in that we are integrated together through history. However, because of our racial identity, we should be separated or segregated, and we should be ruled differently because we have different things going on. And so that's where there's this really funny documentary. It's by that Canadian or British, like, pussy documentarian who speaks really softly, but he's following around a white supremacist and in South Africa, and they're talking to each other, and he's like, hey man, you just had lunch with a Black guy. Like, how do you see that? How do you square that? And he's like, oh, well, the Black guy's racist. And he's like, wait. You're friends with a Black racist. How does that work? You guys view each other as distinct tribes. And he's like, well, I would only be friends with a Black racist because I want Black people to be separated into their group, and I want white people to be separated in their group. So even if we have to share the same territory, I, as a white racist, will only be friends with a Black racist. It was actually like a really funny moment that I think the liberal brain is not built to understand. But I think the frustration with me, especially as a military veteran, let's say 25% is Hispanic and it could grow. And then let's say 13% is African and it could grow. And let's bump that up a little bit. And then let's say like 5% is Asian. And let's say the top part is white. Okay. So for the United States, the reason why I think that maybe I'm like a pussy civic nationalist, paperwork nationalist, is because I actually see Asians and Hispanics as very easy white allies. Like whatever our colonial histories are, whatever our racial and ethno-religious antagonisms, I don't think they're very difficult to overcome in the American project. When it comes to black folk, I think obviously with the legacy of slavery, systemic racism, segregation, Jim Crow, that's obviously a more difficult thing to overcome, but it's not that we can't overcome it. And I think it's actually our job as Americans to overcome it. So this whole like the white being like Northern European, Nick Fuentes saying like, no, we can't take any more Hispanics because we're naturally going to be antagonistic to each other because we're so different. Or black folk are so addicted to crime and the single mother families and welfare and all this bullshit. No, we can't be a part of the same project. It's counterintuitive to me. It's kind of stupid to me. I think it's a waste of time. I think it's a waste of energy. And while Nick is saying like, oh, well, I was sheltered from the racial antagonisms of the world in suburban Chicago, which is why I was kind of like a civic nationalist for a while. I have not been sheltered from the racial antagonisms of America. I think serving in the military and serving in law enforcement, I have seen the ethno-religious and racial antagonisms of America. I don't know why we would I don't know why we would inflame those. Why wouldn't we try to reconcile them and realize that we are a part of a new nation, a part of a propositional nation, and that we need to share power within the state in order to meet the needs of all people? That's like a very capital L liberal conception, but that's genuinely the way I feel. And I feel like Nick saying, oh, no. We need to identify with our Northern European and European heritage, and we need to have antagonism towards Hispanics and blacks and Asians. Why? What problem are you solving? You know? And then this drawing too, just to wrap this up before we get back into the content, what Nick was saying was that the media is so powerful in checking the impulses of political figures that he wanted Donald Trump to get into office in order to check the power and destroy the media so a true conservative agenda could be achieved. And so he kind of bought into the wrecking ball idea of Donald Trump. And that's where we've gotten so far, is as America first. He just wanted Donald Trump in this position of power because he didn't give a fuck what the media said. And so he would be an important check on the media. So Nick Fuentes, origins, philosophy. I'll write that for now. We'll get back into the content.
There's a resolution of the Security Council condemning the settlements in the West Bank and Israel. And typically, the U.S. delegation will veto those resolutions condemning Israel. Well, Obama's on his way out. He's got nothing to lose. So the U.S. delegation abstains from the resolution, and it passes. And Fox News and all the pro-Israel conservatives are calling him an anti-Semite. They're saying he hates Jews. He's an anti-Semite. He hates Israel. And I saw that, and it struck me as strange because it seemed hypocritical. It seemed like how when conservatives would critique anything about race, we got called racist, or anything about feminism, we got called sexist. All Obama did was uphold U.S. policy on the West Bank that we've had since '67, which is we don't support the settlements. I said, how is it anti-Semitic to just be consistent on our U.S. foreign policy, like I said, which is a Republican-Democrat consensus? And I got attacked for this. I wrote a big article about this. I tweeted about it. I tweeted to Ben Shapiro. I said, I've never seen anything on the Daily Wire that's actually critical of Israel. And he quote tweets me. And at this time, I have 1,000 followers on Twitter.
How old are you?
I'm 18. I'm
You're still a freshman in college, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And this,
Jesus, he's a fucking baby throwing elbows. That's crazy. 1,000 followers offered a job in media because of a pro-Trump debate on campus, and then criticizing the Jews and then getting stomped on for it by the establishment. That's interesting.
This is even before I started my show. And I don't know, I probably got 100 likes on this tweet. It wasn't a viral tweet. He quote tweets me and says, to accuse a Jew of dual loyalty is the surest sign of anti-Semitism. And like, this is how it sort of begins. And I see this tweet. And by the way, that was on Christmas Eve in 2016.
He immediately called you an anti-Semite.
Mm-hmm. So I'm driving to Christmas Eve Mass with my family. And I see on Twitter, the notification comes up, Ben Shapiro quote tweets me, calling me an anti-Semite. And I was like, what is this? Like, why is this guy attacking me? You know, because I don't have a platform at this time. I'm not an influential guy or anything. And so then I put out another tweet similar. I said something like, if you're China first, you should live in China. If you're Mexico first, you should live in Mexico. If you're Israel first, maybe you should go live in Israel. And again, he quote tweets me and says, you're an anti-Semite.
That same night?
This was, I think, a couple weeks later. Happened a little bit further down the line. And so...
Were you surprised that he knew you were?
Yeah, I was. I was surprised at why he cared.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking, how does he even know who I am or what I'm about? And it turned out that Cassie Dillon, she had texted him earlier and she wanted him to take me under his wing. She texted him after that debate and said, you know, you really like this guy. He's amazing. He did this great debate. She goes, but he's a little too pro-Trump. He's a little too Trumpy. And he goes, I'll take a look. And so I guess the two of them were kind of like grooming me in a sense. They wanted me to go maybe and be a Daily Wire or maybe looking me as a potential conservative activist or influencer. And so they started paying attention to me. And the more critical of Israel I was, I started to get this really intense pushback from the both of them and from a lot of the people at Daily Wire.
Why do you think, so you're an 18-year-old college freshman, you're clearly talented and you're engaged, you're really interested, and you ask not crazy questions like, what is this? Mm-hmm. And rather than explain it, they just call you a racist, call you an anti-Semite. Like, that's the first response. That seems like the least effective, well, it turned out to be not very effective in your case, but that seems like the least effective thing you could do. Why do you think they did that?
Well, I think that you have to look at it not in retrospect, because hindsight is 20/20. And so looking back, you could say they made a terrible mistake because look at sort of what they provoked or what they catalyzed. But at that time, you got to consider, I'm 18 with no following, with no network. I'm coming from the suburbs of Chicago. My parents didn't go to college. I have no connections. And so for them, it was very easy that if they detected that a promising young guy was going to become anti-Israel in the conservative movement, they could crush that person easily and grind them under the heel. So they sort of were alerted, oh, there's a precocious young guy that isn't on board with Israel. We'll keep an eye on him. And if he gets too vocal or popular, we'll cut him down. We'll crush him. Because at this time, as you know, in 2017, it's a very different time. 2016, 17, yeah. Any criticism or dissent on the subject was a death sentence. You became radioactive, unhireable, blacklisted, and that's exactly what happened. And basically from then on, it was just this escalating series of blacklisting, censorship, hit pieces, rumors to try to ostracize me from the movement. And
while you're a college student?
Yes. As a freshman, yeah.
Hold on. I don't know if I agree with this characterization, but I would be I'm super curious. Okay. I'm super curious because I forgot to put in the Jews. You can't forget the Jews. All right. So Jews, I think, are 2% of the United States. I think they're around 6 million people. And I think it's like 6 million or 8 million in the United States and 6 to 8 million in Israel. So let's take a look. Total global Jewish population, you already know where I was going, is 16 million. Are in Israel. The two largest populations are in the United States, which account for nearly 14 million. 7 million in Israel and 8 million in the diaspora. In the United States, okay, so how many Jews in the United States? Excuse me. So it's 7 million Jews in the United States, 7 million Jews in the state of Israel. And what Nick is saying, I'm probably going to write this down chronologically, I suppose. My drawing is going to be all over the place. But Nick was recruited by Cassie Dillon into Conservative Inc. Cassie was an Israel shill, basically. Cassie / Ben Shapiro checked Nick Fuentes on Israel / anti-Semitism early in his career. And then I would say Nick didn't buy into the post-World War II consensus of American global power backing the, I'll put it in quotes, that way my my Zionist friends don't get pissed, the Zionist project. Okay. Now, I'm actually going to be interested to see how you guys respond to that summary, because I think this is accurate based off of what Nick has said so far. Recruited by Cassie Dillon into Conservative Inc. Cassie was an Israel shill. Cassie Ben Shapiro checked Nick Fuentes on Israel anti-Semitism early in his career. Nick didn't buy into the post-World War II consensus of American global power backing the Zionist project. And so what I would say is Jews punch above their weight, right? They just do, okay? I kind of made a joke about this, but I think it's true. I heard it from Eric Weinstein, I think. Eric Weinstein said that the story of Passover, the reason why they eat unleavened bread on Passover is to remember that the Jews who waited for the bread to rise were either enslaved or killed. And so part of Passover is effectively realizing, and this is like probably one of the biggest Jewish holidays, is realize that the world is a hostile place. You have to keep your head on a swivel. People will try to fuck you over. People will try to enslave you. People will try to kill you. And in order to survive, you have to be smart. You have to be smart. You have to be judicious. You have to understand your environment. You have to be this. You have to be that. Also, going on a little bit of a racist tinge, a racist tirade, if you'll allow me, it is unsurprising to me that the Jewish population is among the highest IQ'd individuals, but also Asians are among the highest IQ'd individuals. And if you look at both of those cultures, how they stretch back 3 millennia, they're not that different than, I don't know, Europeans or Africans or whatever, except for in, I would say, like one critical aspect around 2,500 to 3,000 years. Bear in mind, humanity's been around allegedly for around 100,000 to 200,000 years. So for 99% of history, Jews and Asians were not that different from the rest of humanity. One of the things that separates Asians and Jews from the rest of humanity is a early history of literacy. And what I mean by that is 2,500 years ago, the Jewish community learned how to read and write. The Jewish community learned how to be academic. The Jewish community learned how to study. Same thing with Asians. Asians had an ancient imperial society where they created a middle class through the imperial test, where peasants were encouraged. They weren't barred from reading. They were encouraged to read. They were encouraged to take a bureaucratic test that almost guaranteed that they would have effectively a medieval middle class life. And so when you look at that, at least the way that I look at that, is that I don't think that there's anything like deeply biologically different between Jewish people or European people or Hispanic people or Black people or Asian people, except for like obviously like our environmental differences. You know, Hispanics have more melanin, Blacks have more melanin, Asians, let's not get too racist with it. But the whole point is that I don't think that there's really that much different in our core, in our soul of what a human being is. What I do think is different is the way that our cultures have expressed ourselves historically. So I'll leave it there for now, but I want to see how Nick tackles the post-World War II consensus of America being a global hegemonic power and America's role in backing Israel politically and militarily. And then I also want to see what would be the other thing. America first, for Nick, in my opinion, is America only. And I think that's our decisions should be to our benefit, regardless of how it affects our allies. And I think that's kind of like a naive geopolitical perspective. But I think that is kind of where he's like, why are we helping Israel? Fuck Israel.
Most
right?
coffee or your
They're not our friends.
An empty market.
Purchase they're a rival.
30%
or maybe they're an ally.
Convenience.
But even if they're an ally, why do they treat us so poorly? Blah 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 blah. So let's just say that Nick is skeptical about our alliance with Israel. But let's continue with that.
So, I mean, Ben Shapiro seems like a big part of your political evolution.
Yes.
You went from a fan / acolyte to an opponent and then just pivoted against everything.
Yeah.
That he believes.
Yeah. It was because it was this new dialectic that Trump forced.
Yeah.
Trump planted the seed.
And the seed was America first.
Yes.
So once you accept that, a lot of the way we're doing things becomes impossible to support or justify.
Right. The contradiction becomes apparent. It gets moved to the center and it becomes unignorable if you're consistent.
So what kind of efforts did they make to make you go away?
So this is a couple of months down the line. You know, first they would try to dissuade me from asking questions because I was friends with a lot of the Daily Wire writers, not just Cassie Dillon, but many of them were Jewish. And I would ask them point blank. I would say, so why do we give Israel all this money? $3.8 billion per year? What is that for? And they would say, well, you know, there's a really good answer for that, but you're asking it in the wrong way. You're asking it in an anti-Semitic way. I'd say, I'm asking for the proof. You know, what's the argument there? And so first it was the sort of, hey man, could you kind of tone it down?
I don't know if somebody's asking me this. We kind of moved on from the Destiny stuff, but if you're asking what the allegations of a crime is, the only crime that I'm aware of, or potential crime that I'm aware of, is the audio recording of Sherry. We have no idea if that's consensual, non-consensual. We don't have Sherry's police report. We don't have a criminal prosecution. We don't have shit. That's the alleged criminal behavior. I went through all the statutes. That's the only one that I could find that was criminal. When it comes to Rose, if Stephen has messages that say like, oh, Rose represented themselves as 18 or 19, and then he basically documented that content and turned it over to his lawyers or turned it over to law enforcement, I don't think that, because there's like there's a knowingly part of the statute for that stuff. That's the other criminal allegation. But I think that if he takes what he has and turns it over to law enforcement, I think he'll be fine. But those are the two criminal allegations.
Maybe just don't bring that up so much. But I was persistent because at this time I was genuinely inquisitive. I wanted to know, is there an actual reason? And I was actually expecting that there was a really good reason for all of it. And the
really good reason is the post-World War II consensus, which I'll describe shortly, but let's let Nick cook for a little bit.
The more that I read, the more that I dug into the subject, the more I found out there's a lot of these neocon Jewish types behind the Iraq war. There's the foreign aid complex, which is really unique.
Wait, hold on. Sorry, that's super important. I got to go back a second.
But I was persistent because at this time I was genuinely inquisitive. I wanted to know, is there an actual reason? And I was actually expecting that there was a really good reason for all of it. And the more that I read, the more that I dug into the subject, the more I found out there's a lot of these neocon Jewish types behind the Iraq war. There's the foreign aid complex, which is really unique. There's AIPAC, which is this intent.
Oh, and I got to write this down because I don't want him to motorboat away. I don't want him to gish gallop away. So let's do neocon Jewish involvement in the Iraq war. What else did he say? Military industrial complex. He might not have said that, but you know, I'm just going to presume it. Industrial complex. What he said, AIPAC, foreign lobbying. I'm gonna leave that up. I'm gonna see if he says anything else.
And foreign lobby, where it's bipartisan. It seems to be the only thing that the parties can agree on. And so it just made me burn more with curiosity. So I just kept asking them. And eventually
Justin says one colonial project was Protestant, the other one was Catholic. Delineation is necessary. That's funny coming that Nick is a Catholic and you're a groiper. Wait, Justin. Justin. In the nation state diagram, you are, weirdly enough, the delineation that Nick represents is more in the Hispanic category than it's in the Northern European category. That's funny. Tell me more, please.
they said, you know what? We're not going to talk to you anymore. And these are my friends. I met them, went to Christmas parties with them.
Quick. My God, for the last time, white Caucasian people do not accept white, Latino, Hispanic as part of the white club. Shake my hand. How can you be a grown-up white person and not know this? I do know this beef, you rude bitch, considering that you and I are, you know, we've been chat friends for a while. I'm not gonna come down on you super hard. I do know that. I'm saying that people think that that delineation is necessary and it should be antagonistic. I'm saying that that delineation is not necessary and it shouldn't be antagonistic. Okay? We can still recognize the world outside. We can still recognize, hey, that guy's probably Arab. Hey, that guy's probably Jewish. Hey, that guy's probably Asian. Hey, that guy's probably white. Hey, that guy's probably black. We can recognize that on an exterior lens, but we don't have to let the Hispanic non-Hispanic or the black white or the Jewish European Jewish Christian, we don't have to accept that those relational differences are not necessarily antagonistic. That's what I'm arguing against. I'm not arguing against whether or not most Northern Europeans think of Hispanics as white. I'm arguing that they probably should.
And all of them one day said, you're done. We're blocking you. We're never going to speak to you again. We're never going to have you on our show. And I said, wow, like this seems like inhuman. I'm struck by how impersonal this is. Like here, I thought we're friends. We're all conservatives. Maybe we disagree on one issue. Now I'm being canceled by the right. So I was shocked by this.
When was this?
This was February or March 2017.
So you're still a freshman in college?
Yes.
Are you even paying attention to college at this point?
No, not at all. And my grades started to suffer because I was just really focused on this.
So that's pretty young to get canceled and pretty young to have friendships destroyed over politics. Like that's usually, like decades down the line.
Right.
What did you do?
Well, I just became more emboldened. And so I took this story on my show. At this time, I was on RSBN and I had this show, which I named after the inaugural. It's called America First. And I would kind of subtly bring up the Israel topic and say, this is something you're not allowed to talk about. This seems like an apparent contradiction. It's a big problem. And they escalated their attacks. Cassie Dillon would call my boss, who she was friends with, at RSBN every day for weeks, saying, you'll never believe what Nick said on his show tonight. It's so racist. It's so bad. You got to take him off the air. It's going to make you look bad. And I would then get word from my boss, Joe Seals. He was the founder at Right Side. And he would call me up and say, I don't know what has gotten into Cassie. I thought you guys were friends, but she is calling me every day hysterically, demanding that I fire you. And I was like, wow. So it just keeps getting worse. It starts with this, they're very weird about the subject. Then they don't want to talk to me. Then they're trying to get me fired. And I'm thinking, okay, so clearly what I'm asking about, there's some truth there that they don't want.
I should have asked you this earlier. Did anyone during the course of, pre-cancellation say to you, here are the reasons? You're not asking the question correctly, but there are reasons that our foreign aid to Israel is so high. And here's what they are.
They did, but in a very general and vague way. As you know, it's never specific. They would say things like, well, they're our partner in the Middle East. They're a democracy in the Middle East. Just as very vague. It's rhetorical. And I read The Israel Lobby by Mearsheimer and Stephen Walt, and they break it down very succinctly that there's no real strategic benefit. Actually, there's strategic liability. Eastern Mediterranean is not a strategically important region. The intelligence that Israel provides is not useful. Actually, it's detrimental because they frequently lie. The technology we give them, they pass along to the Chinese, which was a big scandal. So I would give them all this and say, yeah, that's not adding up. And they would say, yeah, well, you really just can't talk about that.
Your friend said that to you?
Yes.
Wow. Okay, so what happened to your job? The Right Side broadcasting gig?
Eventually I got fired. I got kicked out.
Why?
Because one of these clips that Cassie Dillon had a problem with, she ran it up the flagpole. She took it to Media Matters, actually, which is a left-wing outfit. They're like a cancel mill. And
wait, the Daily Wire person took it to Media Matters?
Yes.
Are you sure?
I'm 99% sure.
Huh. What was the clip?
It was a clip, ironically, where I was talking about the travel ban, the so-called Muslim ban, and I was defending it. And I said that the First Amendment does not protect foreign nationals. It doesn't protect Salafists, Wahhabists. Right. He's like, I said, they're saying that there's a constitutional right for radical Muslims to come here. And I said that, how are they protected by the First Amendment? They're foreign nationals. And the authorial intent of the First Amendment was actually not even to protect that to begin with. It's kind of anti-Christendom radical ideology. So it's something, ironically, that probably Shapiro and Cassie would agree with, but they recognize the currency that a clip like that would have with the left, because the left could say, you're Islamophobic, you're racist.
So she brought that to the left, saying, look at this guy. It's not the...
Hi, Justin Garcia. Good to see you.
He's anti-Israel, but he's anti-Muslim.
Yes.
Well, that's Very interesting.
Yes.
And so that clip appears on Media Matters, which at the time, I was the subject of a lot of attacks from them at the time.
I'm listening. Like the stream, share it with your friends, engage with chat, super chats if you got them, memberships if you got them. I parasocially love you. Thank you for being here. Let me go ahead and write this down. And then he read Mearsheimer, I think he said. Mearsheimer book criticizing Israel, saying that all the benefits are bullshit and are a smokescreen. The Eastern Mediterranean is not that important, which I think is also bullshit, but whatever, that's fine. And then he also said, canceled by Daily Wire. Well, I'll just put Cassie Dillon. Cassie Dillon. We don't know if that's true, but if Cassie Dillon was trying to get him fired from right-wing news network or whatever, simultaneous to him getting canceled by Media Matters, I don't think it's beyond the realm of possibility or probability for Islamophobic, quote-unquote, Islamophobic support of the travel ban. Which is funny. That's one of the things where, like, dude, I was an Islamophobe. Arguably, I have Islamophobic tendencies. But what I noticed with the travel ban is like, dude, what I wanted to do is I wanted to screen people who were coming into the United States and I wanted to scour their social media. Number one, I wanted to substantively reduce like immigration from the Middle East and North Africa. Because unless it's beneficial to the United States, I'm not interested in immigration from that part of the world. I think it does cause a lot of problems. However, I wasn't bigoted against like individual Muslims. Like if there's like a smart, nice Muslim guy who just happens to be from Iran or happens to be from Iraq or Syria or Lebanon, and he loves his family and he's not a jihadist or he's even anti-jihadist, then I have no problem with that person immigrating to the United States. What I did have a problem with, bear in mind that this was the 2010s, so this was like immediately after the war with ISIS and still during the Syrian civil war, what I had a problem with was Hillary Clinton's pledge that she was going to bring in 200,000 Syrian refugees. For me, there's no way that you could sufficiently vet 200,000 Syrian refugees, and as a result, there would be a jihadist terrorist attack. There just would be, statistically. And so not just that, but in my opinion, Hillary Clinton doesn't have a duty to the Syrian people. She did have a duty to the American people. So if there are American civilians walking around who will be dead as a result of this policy, with that foreknowledge, you should not be engaged in that policy, right? And so basically I wanted super strict controls on immigration from the Middle East and North Africa and the Muslim majority world. However, what pissed me off about the travel ban was it was the most stupid policy I'd ever seen. It was the dumbest policy I'd ever seen. They just stopped travel from the Middle East and North Africa. They split up normie Muslim families that were already citizens in the United States. They stopped immigrant visas and they stopped refugees who had already been vetted. It was like the worst execution of the policy possible. So, anyways, that's the end of my yap. I'm tired. I'm sick. I'm sorry if my commentary isn't as good as it normally is. Like the stream. It's free. Share it with your friends. If you have a good time, I think we do a disproportionately good stream. So share it with your friends. Engage with chat. We have a lot of fun. There's lots of smart, interesting, cool people here. Super chats if you got them. Memberships if you got them. Thank you for your guys' support already.
And people kind of listen to them.
Yeah.
Including on the right, they listen to them.
Yes.
So what happened?
So I had to write an apology. My boss called me up and said, you need to apologize for what you said.
For being anti-Muslim.
Yes. And so I didn't write, I'm sorry, but I had to write something like, well, I should have chosen my words more carefully and this, that, and the other. And ultimately, then they fired me a couple weeks later. Yeah.
What was the pretext for that?
Well, they wanted to get in the White House press office. They wanted a press pass. And they said, the stuff you're saying on the show isn't like a good look for right side. They're not going to let us into the White
Justin says, what if it's irreconcilable? You think that You think that God put a human being on one part of the planet and God put a human being on a different kind of a planet and you can't reconcile your differences? What the fuck are you talking about?
House, if you're with us.
But the pressure in this scenario came exclusively from the Daily Wire.
Yes. Yes, because, and here's how I know why. My show got maybe 100 live viewers every night.
Not a powerhouse show.
No. So the Media Matters was not onto me. They were put onto me by people in the right that wanted me canceled.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. So then what do? You're failing in school. Your show just got canceled. What's your plan now?
So I dropped out. I didn't,
college.
Yep. And I hated college, and it was very expensive. Even I had a substantial scholarship, but it was still expensive, and I didn't like it. So my plan was that I was going to go to a different college. I might work for a year, make some money. And eventually I got the show back about a month later. They came back, and by popular demand from my 100 viewers who were very dedicated, Right Side offered me the show back. And so I took the show again over the summer. And then I applied for a job at the Leadership Institute. And that was kind of the next big saga.
But you didn't get that job.
No, I did not get the job.
Why?
Well, I was told, because I knew people that worked there, that were field representatives there. It was a field representative job. And so I went out for a job training at the end of July 2017. So after that second semester, and I applied for this field rep job. It was this 2-week training.
Grassroots for another 20. Thank you, King. Critical to understand people like Nick, who are fascists upfront, believe that violence is a religiously purifying experience. Violence is prerequisite. It's the main median and norm. Not everyone can or will hate Jews given time. You know, what's interesting, though, is I feel like he's either hiding his power level or he backed off because he realized he was on the chopping block after the Charlie Kirk thing. Unironically, Stephen's prescription or Stephen's description that conservatives should be afraid that their spicy rhetoric could result in violence, that applies to Nick. Nick saw Charlie Kirk got shot and he was like, holy shit, if somebody shot Charlie Kirk, they would definitely shoot me. I'm going to chill the fuck out. Weirdly enough. But I do want to say, I have half a dozen people who have super chatted so far, but it is predominantly Grassroots Hegemon. Okay. We got 4 donos from Grassroots Hegemon. Thank you, King. I parasocially love you. And thank you for the support. I also want to thank Fashion 40. It's just Avi and Patriarch. So again, like the stream, share it with your friends, engage with chat, super chats. If you got them, memberships, if you got them, I parasocially love you. Thank you for being here. Let's go.
I go there, and on the first day of the whole thing, they go around the room of all the prospective applicants. It's like a big tryout, basically, for 2 weeks.
Mr. S says, feels funny comparing a giant group like Asians with a very specific one like Jews, in my honest opinion. I don't even know if that's true. Isn't the Asian population of the United States, isn't it like 5%? What percent of Americans are Asian? 7%. What percent of Americans are Jews? 2.4%. Asians are just double the Jews. Double or triple the Jews. I think that's comparable. Asians might be massive internationally, but in the United States, they're only 7%.
Weeks, and they wanted to get everybody to break the ice and know each other. So we did introductions. They said, say your name, how old you are, and why you're a conservative. And at this time...
Oh, you were talking about like histories of literacy. Yeah, sure. But also, I would say that Jews in the Middle Eastern and North African and European context, they were one of the first literate societies. For a lot of Middle Eastern and North African societies, and definitely for Europeans, reading was exclusively for the upper class.
People are not where, let's say, we are right now. They're not America first. They're not anything like, they're not talking about great replacement. That's not on the radar for them. So you go around the room and you hear stuff about...
Yeah, Redmond Barry says a charming detail is that Chinese royal exams included calligraphy skill as a requirement. Based.
Small government, free markets, personal responsibility, that sort of thing. And they get to me and I said, well, I'm a conservative because we're losing our civilization because of mass immigration. America doesn't resemble America anymore. France is no longer France. I said, and if we don't conserve the demographics, forget about the rest. That's what we need to conserve. And I said that. And I was told later on that at that moment, I was immediately disqualified by the people that were running the job training.
On what grounds?
I said that was too far right. That was too extreme.
Worrying about who lives in your country is far right?
Apparently.
I love how he sanitizes it. Worrying about who lives in your country is far right? Nice. Nice, Tucker. Sane washing Nick Fuentes. Awesome. Thanks, buddy. Definitely not funded by Qataris to sow social division.
Where does that leave you ideologically? Like, how are you changing at this point?
So at this point, I'm realizing that something is deeply wrong here in the conservative movement, because we were led to believe in those days of the campus culture wars and Gamergate and all that is that.
Hold on. I'm just going to expand on this real quick because I feel like I need to do additional commentary rather than just listening. I am learning a lot. So I know Justin was saying like we should skip this because it's a lot of biographical stuff. I don't think I'd ever gotten like a chronological narrativization of his rise or whatever. So actually getting this is actually pretty good for me. I'm sure he's talked about it plenty, but I've just never seen it narrativized so succinctly. Got fired from media job, offered a media job back, then applied for new media job and was disqualified for for saying that conservatism should be concerned with conserving the demographics of the current nation. And so what's interesting about this is I think, Nick is saying that he ran afoul of Jews and liberals and progressives and liberal conservatives and this, that, the other. And I just mean liberal conservatives who believe in like maximal human freedom. But what's funny is he also ran afoul of libertarians, because the thing about it is, I think that if you take a look at this is my explanation. This is my cope. If you look at birth rate since 1800, so if you look at the global birth rate since 1800, come on, where are you? So 1950. Okay, I think. Damn, isn't there an 1800s one? I want one that goes all the way back into the 19th century, because the 19th century one is fucking bananas. What is this? 1950, 1900, 1850. Okay, crude birth rate. That's not what I want though. Per 1,000 people. I want the fertility rate. Fertility rate since 1800. So if you look at the fertility rate, we basically crashed, man. We were at, what is this? Open link in new tab. I could probably just do 1950 if I wanted to, because the trend is pretty much the same. Although I guess this one's probably going to be the, oh, that's a pandemic baby bump. That's even smaller. The point is that we were at 7. Okay, here we go. So in 1800, in the United States, the average woman through their lifespan would have like 7 children. Now, half of these kids would die in infancy. They would die of disease. They would die of dysentery. They would die by getting murdered by Native Americans. Having a 7 births per woman birth rate was not because in the 1800 we were doing awesome. It's because we were getting the shit kicked out of us and plenty of us were dying. That's why the birth rate was so high. But what happened, and I almost guarantee you if you look at Europe, it's going to be similar birth rates. But if you go through the 19th century, what ended up happening was it dropped precipitously as it correlated with industrialization. Because this is where, I don't know when like condoms became like widely available, but not only did birth control measures become available more broadly through industrialization, but also industrialization reduced the amount of deaths that occurred in infancy and reduced the amount of deaths that occurred from disease. And so as a result, it wasn't as required for us to get more kids. Now, we hit like an all-time low in World War II, probably because all the men were gone. Then we had a bump when the men came back, probably because they were scared shitless and they'd seen all their friends get murdered. So they wanted to make sure that their progeny succeeded. So through the 1960s, we got back up to the average family having 3 kids per household. And then we dropped back down. And now this is the baby boom, by the way. This is the boomers. And then now we drop back down to below 2 for the United States. And I think like with Northern European whites, it's around like 1.3 or 1.4. I think with Hispanics, it can be as high as like 2. I think with black folk, it can be like a little bit higher or a little bit lower. But the whole point is that we're below 2 and immigration is a stopgap. So the reason why that it seems silly to me to say like we must preserve our demographics. Well, if we must preserve our demographics, then realistically, we would probably need to expel the Jews. So we would need to go back to like a pre-World War II Jewish population. So we need to expel around 6 million Jews. We would need to expel a shitload of the Asians because we've taken in a lot of like Indians. We've taken in a lot of Pakistanis. We've taken a lot of Persians. We've taken a lot of those people. So we would need to expel those people. And then for Africans, if you were African American, you could stay. But then if you were like African, you would need to leave. That's such a silly, like, what are we accomplishing through doing this? Asian and black immigrants, most immigrants are, maybe not most immigrants, but a shitload of the immigrants from Asia, Africa, and Europe are high skilled. We're bringing them in because they're business owners, or we're bringing them in because they have high skills that are in demand in the United States. That's why we're bringing those people in. And when it comes to Hispanic immigration, those people are coming in because of low skill. They're coming in to do construction. They're coming in to do agriculture. I think it was estimated that between 20 and 40% of the agricultural and construction industry is made up of Central and South American immigrant labor. What problem are we solving? And even if we solved this problem, let's say that we just did what Nick wanted to do. We froze immigration. We secured the border. We got it back to 2% Asian, 13% black, and 85% white. Number one, what problem did we solve? Number two, what are the consequences of those actions, and are they fucking disastrous? My answer would be yes. So not only does his description of the history of the world kind of suck, but also his prescription sucks. So again, this is where like I would say buying into Mearsheimer. I've heard Mearsheimer kind of described as like a contrarian douchebag in geopolitical analysis. And then I've also, I don't know what problem Nick thinks he's solving. If we look at crime's at an all-time low next to 1960. If we look at immigration, most people integrate. I don't know what the fuck his problem is.
That we're the marketplace of ideas and we're about free speech and the rest of it. And here I am being like nuked from orbit by Ben Shapiro as a kid. And for asking what I thought were reasonable questions, because I didn't come from some strange background.
I'm just asking questions, bro.
From a normal home. My parents are Catholic. They're married. We came from a relatively affluent suburb. I went to Lyons Township. That's like a very affluent high school. In other words, I didn't wake up as like the son of William Luther Pierce. I wasn't like a skinhead or something. I was like a normal guy that was like, yeah, like country's too diverse. We're too pro-Israel. Like this is reasonable. And I was just getting sandbagged for it and blacklisted. And what's more, nobody cared. Like, because I remember going on Twitter and saying like, why isn't anyone sticking up for me? Where's Dave Rubin? The free speech warrior. Where's he on this one? Where's Shapiro? Where's all these people? And in some way, they were all sort of complicit in this. So I realized that the conservative movement was completely bankrupt in that way.
Yeah.
Doobie says, the Mearsheimer book is excellent. Why am I unsurprised? Why am I unsurprised, Doobie? Why am I unsurprised? That's awesome. Oh, man. All right, let's look it up. What's the Israel Mearsheimer book? I'll add it to my Audible. Mearsheimer, American political scientist. I think I've seen him on debates before. Political scientist, international relations. I thought he was going to be German or Russian. Mearsheimer is best known for developing the neo-realist or structural realist theory of offensive realism, which describes the interaction between great powers as being primarily driven by the rational desire to achieve regional hegemony in an anarchic international system. In accordance with this theory, in 2001, The Tragedy of Great Power Politics, Mearsheimer says that China's growing power will likely bring it into conflict with the United States. In his 2007 book, The Israel Lobby and U.S. Foreign Policy, Mearsheimer argues that the Israel lobby wields disproportionate influence over U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East. His more recent work on criticism, The Liberal International Order, laid down in his 2018 book, The Great Delusion, Liberal Dreams and International Realities, and why he believes the West is to blame for the Russo-Ukrainian war. I guess I have to read Mearsheimer now. I guess I have to read Mearsheimer. In 1974, while in the Air Force pussy. Oh, he was in the Army first. All right, nice. He enlisted in the Army. After 1 year as an enlistment, he obtained an appointment to the United States Military Academy at West Point, which he attended from 66 to 70, earning a BS. Mearsheimer then served 5 years from 70 to 75 in the United States Air Force, rising from a second-in-command lieutenant to the rank of captain before resigning. Interesting. He went to Cornell. That's cool. He interned at the Arms Control and Disarmament Agency. That sounds bitch made. Brookings. Okay. Okay. So he's a smart cat. He did a postdoctoral at Harvard. So I guess I have to read 3 Mearsheimer books because The Great Delusion, Liberal Dreams, and International Realities. This is a book that I could have written the opposite of. So I need to read this. Then the Israel lobby and foreign lobbying, the Israel lobby and U.S. foreign policy. I need to read that. That way I can be spun up on the anti-Israel stuff. And then the tragedy of great power politics. Honestly, that just sounds based. That just sounds like good reading. I love geopolitics, man. I love geopolitics.
It became very radical.
Well, you became. I mean, let me just say, I'm so familiar with. I was much older when it happened to me, and much more insulated. I was not a college student. I was like 45. So and I was in a much better place to withstand the pressure. But I do think and I want to. This is my main question to you: is when you get attacked, when people call you names, like they always call me racist, and I would always think to myself, I'm actually not. I would tell you if I was racist. I'm a little sexist, but I'm not racist. And I never understood why they did that. And then I thought maybe the point is to make me racist. Where you just get to a point where you're like, well, if you're going to slander me, then I'll just become the thing you're calling me. I do think that's a feature of human nature, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
And if you stare too.
That's almost a moment of self-realization there where it's like, wow, you labeled me the bad guy. I guess I'll adopt all the bad guy principles. Thanks, Tucker.
Intently at the accusers, at the, whatever, Ben Shapiro's or Mark Levin's or Ted Cruz or whoever it is calling you names, it like distorts you and you actually change and become what they say you are. Have you thought that ever? Do you worry that happened to you?
No, I don't.
All right, I got to use the restroom. I'll be right back.
Don't think it ever did because I know who I am. I had a very firm grounding of what I'm about, which is that I was deeply Catholic, and I still am, deeply patriotic and pro-American. And I don't consider myself temperamentally to be an angry or a hateful person. So I never, in other words, lost my center. They say this thing about you look into the abyss and the abyss stares back into you. That never really happened to me. I was frustrated. I was frustrated because I felt like I was being denied a level playing field, opportunity, and it wasn't fair. I felt like I was right. And these people that were basically hypocrites, grifters, not really conservative, they were controlling the conversation, and as a consequence, they were controlling the Republican movement. And I really perceive this as like an urgent crisis, because if we wanted Trump to deliver America first, to realize it, the Trump movement had to transform the conservative movement to reflect the victory that Trump won.
So, and I won't keep torturing you with biographical questions, but I do want to so how your show gets canceled. You drop out of college, you have no money, you decide you want to work at the Leadership Institute, which is like a conservative think tank or some organization of longstanding in Arlington, Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get the job there because you're worried about immigration. It's all pretty amazing. And then, where does that leave you? How did you succeed?
Well, I continued doing my show. I did it independently.
What does that mean? How do you do it? How do you do a show independently? How did you do it?
I started a YouTube channel,
yeah.
And I was in my parents' basement, and I put up a green screen, I got my computer, webcam, and I just started going live every night in the same way that I did at RSBN. I just did it on my own channel where I had creative control over it. And at that point, I basically mounted an attack on the conservative establishment from the outside. I sort of realized that there's sort of 2 ways you could play this. You could infiltrate the conservative movement. I could recant all my views and apologize and pretend to be one of them and bypass the gatekeepers, the censors. I said, or I could kind of be in the wilderness, and I would be alone, and I would be radioactive, but I could challenge the credibility and legitimacy of the conservative movement and its claim to represent conservatives. And that was kind of the mission, was to say, no, the immovable standard is America first. I'm going to represent it, and the conservative movement is going to have to move to me. I will not move towards them. And I thought, maybe I'll make money and maybe I won't, but I'm going to try it for a couple of years and I'll see how it goes.
So, but the sight picture in your head was enemy is conservative movement.
Yes.
Do you think that was a good choice?
Yes, absolutely.
Rather than like, but why not like Antifa or, I don't know, Anti-Defamation League, or there are a lot of institutions on like George Soros. Like, why would it be their conservative establishment? Why do you think that was important?
Well, I kind of took a page from Trump's playbook, which is that you have to, in the country, the left was hegemonic over all the institutions. And you have this organized opposition to the left and the Democrats and all the left-wing controlled institutions. And the organized opposition comes from movement conservatism, the Republican Party, Fox News, the sort of constellation of conservative institutions. And I said, the problem is, whether you go Democrat or you go Republican, you're kind of just like getting the same thing. You're getting the establishment effectively. The opposition is basically controlled or moderated. It's not authentic opposition. It's not a true alternative. And so I said, we, and by we, I mean the true America First nationalists, we need to fight for the mantle of the opposition. And then leading the opposition, then we can take the fight to the left as the conservatives, as the Republicans, whatever. But first, you have to win that internal battle among the audience that the conservatives have. Because that's really the problem, is that they have usurped. The base is extremely conservative, extremely anti-left. But the Republican Party, like those that represent them, are not at all. A lot of them are atheists, a lot of them are gay, a lot of them are feminists. And so I said, like, we kind of need to rally, like Trump did, rally the base against the establishment, and then take the fight to the left as the true alternative. And if you can win that, then you win the country. That was kind of Trump's model.
What did you see as like the most important gatekeepers that needed to be overturned, pushed aside in order to do this?
It was the Zionist Jews, like Dave Rubin, like Ben Shapiro, like Dennis Prager. It was these the guys that were really controlling the media apparatus that seemed to me to be the biggest impediment.
Fox is not a Jewish business, though.
Well, Rupert Murdoch is an ally of Netanyahu, so he's aligned.
Yeah.
And he owns the whole News Corp empire. So, and yeah, he's certainly a part of it also.
I mean, Dave Rubin, though, does he matter?
No, not really.
Right. I mean, Dave Rubin is like, I don't know. Do people watch Dave Rubin?
They did back then. I mean, because you got to.
Bro, Tucker's gonna big dog Dave Rubin like that. That's kind of rude. What's funny is I was talking crazy shit about Dave Rubin. Damn, those look great. Those look great. Holy shit, B&T looks good. Sorry, I need like $1 bajillion so I can buy some guns. Anyways, let's take a look at this real quick. I just want to take a look at Dave Rubin because one time I used to watch Dave Rubin, man. I used to watch him in like, I don't know, 17, I guess. And in 17, he was like the perfect vehicle for the, what did they call it? Like the Dark Enlightenment, not the Dark Enlightenment, the intellectual dark web, where he was like just the perfect guy who was like, I'm just asking questions, and it seems like the left has gone too far, and it's just crazy. I agree, and so you go check out his numbers, and for a 3 million sub YouTube channel, I would say this is underperforming. 50K views, 244K views, 114K views. I kind of say that a healthy channel gets 10% of its viewership. So if he has 3.1 million subs, if he was cooking, in my opinion, he should be getting like around 300,000 views per video. Now, that being said, I think all of this shit adds up. So if I go to Social Blade, somebody was criticizing me for using Social Blade the other day, but I really don't care. I think you can kind of gauge somebody's relevance or their channel health through growth. So he makes between $15,000 and $200,000 a month based off of his viewership. He is averaging an increase in subs in the tens of thousands. So he's had 2 months in the past like decade where he didn't gain any subs or he lost subs. Monthly gained views, 65 million 33 million, 66 million, 53 million. This motherfucker is raking it in. I can't wait for Tucker Carlson to big dog me the way that he fucking big dogged Dave Rubin. I hope Tucker Carlson one day he's like, Counterpoints. That fucking loser? Who listens to that guy? What a piece of shit. And then meanwhile, I have 33 million monthly views and I make like 200 grand on AdSense. You know? That's a good problem.
Consider they were kind of like the ascendant new media, you know? They represented the next big thing.
I mean, and Ben Shapiro seems irrelevant to me now.
But back then, for the
I
young,
guess
he was
that's true.
huge. Mm-hmm.
So maybe you won.
Justin for 10 says, stop saying he's hiding his power level. He just said on Gavin that Jews who are loyal to Jewish identity shouldn't have power in America. You guys keep searching for violence. All Nick does is talk. Justin, with love and respect, how in a constitutional republic with birthright citizenship that has not been overturned by Donald Trump, how do you take away American citizens' power? Answer that question for me. I would love. Thank you for the super chat, by the way. I would love it if you told me, how do you take away Jewish power in the United States without violence? Please tell me. I'm happy to be enlightened.
Oh, certainly.
Well, it wasn't that long ago that many Americans thought they were.
Oh my God, the commercials. Endless commercials.
The country's orientation on foreign policy, and those would include Marjorie Taylor Greene, J.D. Vance, Matt Gaetz, me. But you've attacked all of those people.
Yeah.
Why would you? And almost Joe Kent.
Mm-hmm.
Those strike me as someone who's really interested in this topic. I'm not that interested in the Jews, but I'm very interested in the foreign policy question. Those seem like the most sincere people. Those seem like the only hope of the country to get away from this destructive, really self-destructive cycle. Why attack them?
Well, in short, they attacked me first.
Yeah, but like, who cares?
Well, let's take Joe Kent.
I mean, you attack me constantly.
Well,
and I'm like, I don't really give a shit. I want to meet the guy.
You attacked me first, too.
No. But what I'm saying is I'm not whining about it.
Sure.
I'm just saying, like, so, you know what I mean?
Well, I don't say so.
This could get a little spicy.
Oh, because, like, take Joe Kent, for instance. I supported Joe Kent, and I talked to Joe Kent. I got introduced to him by Matt Brainerd. Matt Brainerd went to my conference in 2021. He bought a table.
Was he his campaign manager?
He was.
Okay.
Or he was a consultant, but he was,
he
was on the campaign, yeah. And so I met Matt Brainerd. He liked me a lot. He loved my
Doobie says, why wouldn't you say white people should advocate to keep more from immigrating? Why wouldn't you say white people? Why wouldn't you say? Who are you talking about? I don't know who you're talking about. If you're talking about Hispanics, you know, maybe I just have a rose-tinted view of Hispanics, but I largely have a rose-tinted view of Hispanics because of my exposure to Hispanics. Most Hispanics I know work their fucking asses off. Most Hispanics I know care a lot about their families. Most Hispanics I know are religious and they're conservative and they're nice and they're considerate. So, you know, maybe I'm romanticizing what Hispanic Americans have to offer the United States of America, but I think my romanticization of Hispanics is backed up by personal experience and probably statistics. So I don't know if you're talking about Hispanics or if you're talking about people. I don't know if you're Doobie. I don't know if you're calling me an Islamophobe or if you're calling me a Hispanophile. I don't know what you're calling me right now. So specify your criticism, please.
conference in February 21, which he bought a table at for his organization, Look Ahead America. And in 2021, we, and by we, I mean my nonprofit and my
Ray Sunlight says, Connor, when did the whole birth rate become so big? I remember going to school in the 80s and being cautioned about our overpopulation globally. I don't think that it is big. I think the fear in the 1970s, because bear in mind, that's when like the baby boomers were coming of age. So they didn't know what demographics were going to be like in the 60s and 70s. They realized that if the baby boom went on in perpetuity, and if like human population growth went on in perpetuity, we would eventually, exhaust the resources of the planet. That was the concern. I don't think it was specifically, I don't think a lot of people in 70s and 80s media, when they were worried about overpopulation, I don't think that they were analyzing crude birth rate. You have to understand that that was a time before the internet. People just got random ideas. They couldn't verify it through the internet. If they wanted to verify anything, they would have to go to the library and read very specific books. And, you know, I'm sure plenty of people did talk about the boom, the baby boom and the baby bust. But, you know, people in pop culture might have been completely unaware of the baby bust. The baby bust might have, when they were making documentary films about human overpopulation in the 70s, and when people were making pop culture dystopian sci-fi in the 80s with an overpopulated planet, they might not have even known that we were facing a demographic bust.
Myself and my team, we wanted to support America First candidates in the midterms, like you said, authentic opponents.
Me too.
Yeah,
that's how I found Joe Kent.
Yes, and so I met a lot of the people in that sort of scene, like Ryan Gerdusky. I know is very supportive of.
Doobie says it was when it started. Why shouldn't it be again? What the fuck, you Doobie? You need to be more specific, bro. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Why shouldn't we get back to the demographics of 1776? Because we would have to dispossess vast swaths of patriotic, integrated, socially and economically productive Americans of their citizenship, and then we would have to deport them to countries of origin with whom they share very little. That's why I would be against returning the demographics of the United States to 1780. Why are you arguing for it? What are we talking about?
Joe Kent and other people that are more private, I don't want to name, but they put me on, not just to Joe Kent, but Patrick Witt in Georgia, Gibbs in Michigan, a lot of different people. And Joe Kent was one of them. And I had a phone call with Joe Kent. And I told him, I had my assistant on the phone too, who's Jewish, by the way, just because I want you to know I'm cool like that. You know, I don't judge. But so I'm on the phone with Joe and I said, look,
dude, look at this. So some of you are busting my rhetorical balls about condoms. Condoms have been used for centuries, but their popularity increased significantly during the 18th and 19th centuries. In the 18th century, rubber condoms were invented, making them more affordable and reliable. They became popular among the upper classes as a way to prevent STIs. In the 19th century, with the improvement of rubber manufacturing, condoms became more widely available and affordable to the general population. They were also promoted as a way to prevent pregnancy. Early 20th century, condoms gained further popularity due to the rise of syphilis epidemic and the increasing acceptance of birth control. Late 20th century, the AIDS epidemic in the 80s led to a surge in condom use as a means of preventing HIV. So, unironically, I know I say that word too much, but if you look at the history for the past 200 to 300 years, if you look at the decrease in fertility rate, the decrease in fertility rate correlates almost perfectly with industrialization, the increase in human lifespan and human health through industrialization, and also the creation of birth control. So I stand by my assessment. I don't think condoms are going back in Pandora's proverbial box.
we support you and we want to do everything we can to help you. We want to have my followers knock on doors for you. We want to boost your social media. Anything that you need, we want to help you. I said, and we don't even want to be publicly associated. I said, because we know that that might hurt you. I said, the only thing that we ask in return is you can't disavow me if the media asks. And you can say whatever you need to say, but you can't disavow. And he said, yeah, I totally agree with you, because if we start disavowing each other, then we're just going to eat each other alive and the left wins. We're in agreement. And a couple months later, Joe tweeted in support of me because I had been banned on all social media. I was on the no-fly list. So he said something on Twitter like, you know, Nick Fuentes shouldn't be banned. He should not be censored. A month after that, I put out on Twitter, I said, Joe Kent is one of the most impressive America First candidates that's running in 22. Well, fast forward a whole year later, I do my annual conference, AFPAC, in February 22. Marjorie Taylor Greene attends. It's we had 1,200 people, and it got a lot of media attention. And I'm driving home, because I'm on the no-fly list at this time. I'm driving home from Florida.
Can I ask you, pause? By no-fly list, you mean not extra scrutiny, but like not allowed to fly in airplanes in the United States?
Not allowed to fly, yes.
Well, how old were you?
I was 23.
Did you have any felony
Oh, he was just a small beans. He was just a small boy.
convictions?
No.
Okay. I wasn't even aware that could happen. How long were you not allowed?
Doobie says, if avoiding a cultural shift is enough to justify Israel maintaining a Jewish ethno-state, why is a cultural shift in criminal behavior in the U.S. a justification at Patriarch? Doobie, I'm assuming you're devil's advocating in my chat. So, I don't think anybody who is a tepid Zionist such as myself advocates for a Jewish ethno-state. Matter of fact, 80%, of the, that's where it gets complicated, right? Maybe a religio state would be more apt, but I don't know, man. We already looked it up. The Jews are partially Maghrebi, which is like East Africa. They're Mizrahi, which I think is Middle Eastern and North African. They're Sephardic, which I think is Spanish, if I remember correct, from like Muslim controlled Spain. And I think they're also Ashkenazi. And I think they're 70% Ashkenazi, and then they're made up of the other groups. So they're already like ethnically pluralist due to the diaspora. But even if you didn't accept that, because you're like, oh, well, they're all Jews, so they all have that cultural connection. So let's treat them as a single ethno-religious group, okay? 20% of Israel is still Arab Muslim, and I don't think that people would be making the same arguments about Israel cultural integrity. I wouldn't be making the same Israel cultural integrity arguments if their neighbors weren't murderously hostile. So, for instance, let's say that Arab Muslims were like the chillest people on earth. Let's say that Arab Muslims were like Hindu Jainists. They were pacifists, utterly uninterested in the mortal plane, utterly uninterested in political power, and utterly uninterested in violence. I think that if every person surrounding the state of Israel was a Hindu Jain, then Israel would have an infinitely more difficult argument to make, saying, oh, Jains living amongst us is an existential threat to the state of Israel. But when you have the government of a neighbor, Gaza, invade your territory and slaughter 1,200 people, 900 civilians intentionally, I think it's easier to say, hey, we can't be 80% Arab Muslim, because if we're 80% Arab Muslim, number one, they'll dispossess us from government. Number two, they'll probably ethno-religiously purge us. So again, I feel like you're taking non-analogs and you're trying to make them analogous. And I think that you saying that I'm an Islamophobe, I think that it is like Islamophobia, obviously like phobia implies like irrational fear or hatred. I don't think I have an irrational fear or hatred of Islam. I think I have a pretty rational and sober assessment of Islam and Muslims. But anyways, let's go.
Allowed to fly in airplanes in the United States.
1 year.
It's really crazy.
Yeah, it was.
Sorry, I just want to get that out.
No, yeah, it's brutal.
And you confirm that you were not allowed to fly in airplanes?
Yes, I have the letter from the TSA. Yeah, I was on the do not board list.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's crazy. But so anyway, so I'm driving home from Florida after my conference, and I get people start texting me. Joe Ken is on Twitter, and he says, I condemn Nick Fuentes, especially his views on Israel. That's the tweet. And I texted Joe, and I said, seriously? And he texts me back, and he says, we win by addition, not subtraction. I go, well, you just subtracted me out of the movement. I said, because I don't support you anymore. He goes back for seconds. He goes on Twitter and says, Nick Fuentes and his focus on race and religion does not fit with my message of inclusive populism. Inclusive populism. That doesn't sound like authentic America first. That sounds like bullshit to me. And I don't know. I know he's your friend, but I don't know him that well. Right. I'm not on the team.
Well, so my read on Joe Kent was he's totally sincere. He, like me, has always been committed to separating out like foreign policy views from ethnicity, not because, I mean, obviously I'm denounced as an anti-Semite every day. Mm-hmm. So I don't really care what ADL thinks of me, but my Christian faith tells me that there's no such thing as blood guilt, and virtue or sin is not inherited. It's not a feature of DNA. So every person must be assessed individually as God assesses each person individually. And that's like a foundational view. So I always thought it's great to criticize and it's question like our relationship with Israel because it's insane and it hurts us. We get nothing out of it. I completely agree with you there. But the second you're like, well, actually, it's the Jews.
Doobie says Cotter is about to read all my posts and think I'm defending ethno-nationalism because he missed the first couple of posts. So true, King. So true. Quick shill as we continue to move through the content. I might take a break and move into like another content just so we have 2-hour VODs. I might do a part 1 and a part 2. I don't know how you guys feel. I feel like I have gotten to know the true Nick Fuentes. Okay. I feel like I've gotten to see Tucker Carlson do a pretty softball Homelander style interview where he's like, I'm just asking questions, which I think is pretty fucking funny. However, if I was to summarize what's going on, let me pull up my, let me see if my other drawing has something. So this was Nick Fuentes's preliminary argument, was that he didn't like Trump. He thought Trump was a piece of shit, but he thought Trump was necessary as a wrecking ball to take on the media because Republicans and conservatives were so cucked by the media that they never wanted to piss off the liberal and progressive media establishment. And so that's his early view of Donald Trump. Then when it came to the nation state, this is something that I just drew because I was like, I wanted to differentiate between the nation, which is the people, specifically in the United States. This is our ethno-religious mix or racial mix. And then the state is the government that represents this body of people. And I want to differentiate those two concepts, okay? But when it comes to the paint that we've done now, I also I added the Jews, because of course, how could I forget the Jews? I don't know how I forgot the Jews. But the Jews are 1 to 2% of the population. Or actually, they're 2.5%. Asians are 7%. Black is 13%. Hispanic is like 24%. And white is the rest. So we have a slim demographic majority of Northern Europeans, non-Hispanic Europeans in the United States. But what I said, what I don't like about Nick Fuentes and his movement in Christian nationalism is through anti-Semitism and through race realism, they are encouraging antagonistic relationships between Northern European whites, Hispanics, blacks, and Asians and Jews. And I just don't think that is, it's not socially conducive. It's not making the world a better place. It's making the world actively a worse place. Then as far as narrativizing Nick's like origin story, it looks like he was being recruited for Conservative Inc., but he kind of became a contrarian in reference to Israel and geopolitics, which, you know, God bless him. He blazed his path. But through blazing his path, he became increasingly disliked by Jewish Zionists and Semitophiles, people who love the Jews. I'm a Semitophile. Love me some Jews. But basically, he got on the wrong side of Semitophiles who kept trying to take him out because they didn't want a charismatic, funny, weird, Catholic, Christian nationalist advocating for Christian nationalism in the United States and getting popular. To his credit, there was obviously some room in the zeitgeist for Christian nationalism, for Christian theocracy, because now it's a broad part of the Trump base. And a lot of people who were previously liberal in that they tolerated people of different races, classes, creeds, religions, etc. Now they're like, yeah, fuck you. I'm a Christian theocrat. Fuck, you know, fuck all these other ethno-religious groups, you know? So Nick found his lane. Good for him, I guess.
First of all, it's against my Christian faith. Like, I just don't believe that, and I never will, period. And second, then it becomes a way to discredit. That's when I was like, this guy's a Fed. I was totally convinced you were a Fed because I was like, here he's bear hugging like the one sincere guy who lost his wife in Syria thanks to the fucking crazy wars, neocon wars. And
oh, fuck you too, you fucking pussy. God, I hate Tucker. Bashir al-Assad, yeah, Syria would be better off with a fucking murderous dictator, Bashir al-Assad. Iraq would be better off with Saddam Hussein, a murderous fucking rapist piece of shit. Fuck you, Tucker.
he's discredited. He's doing the David Duke. Like David Duke would always, every time I rolled out a new show, he would issue an endorsement of the show. I've never met the guy. What's that? Well, it's the feds. Obviously, he's trying to destroy me by association. Whatever. You see the point?
Yeah, but so let me ask you this. So if I'm supporting Joe Kent, I'm David Duke bear hugging. If I attack Joe Kent, I'm attacking the only sincere American.
Conservative liberalism says, I have an ancestor that fought in the Battle of Bennington in 1777. Do I get to stay even if I'm a Northern European mutt spawned of more recent arrivals as well? Of course, dude. This is where, you know, Doobie, I'm sorry if I misunderstood that you were advocating for Nick's position. I'm sorry if you were just steel manning or argumentatively dealing with someone in chat where you wanted to get to the steel man. So sorry if I took you at face value. But this is where I think it's so fucking silly, man. When are we going to stop the bar? Are we going to stop the bar at Hispanics who served in the military and they're first generation American? Obviously not. Are we going to deport Africans who are citizens who immigrated, who naturalized and became a part of our culture? Obviously not. Are we going to denaturalize and deport 2 or 3 generations of Jews that have integrated and become citizens since World War II? Obviously not. And if you try to start doing this shit, I hate the Fed post about it, but if you start trying to denaturalize citizens of the United States who have done no crime besides being born of the wrong ethno-religious background, I think at that point it's like Civil War time. I think at that point we just pick up guns and we fight it out and we see who wins. Because I'm so sick of this shit. I'm so sick of the fucking LARPing. I'm so sick of the Civil War bullshit. And by the way, Justin, I am still interested. I'm hoping that I get to your comment eventually. How do you dispossess? So there are plenty of American citizens who are second or third generation Jewish who have sympathies with the state of Israel. And they could be in media, they could be in business, they could be in finance. And it is, in my opinion, it is their right, the same way that I, as an Irishman or an ethno-religiously descended Irishman, if I wanted to politically advocate for the state of Ireland, it is my legal and moral right to do so. So if Nick is saying, oh, you misunderstand, it's all peaceful. Nick's a peaceful guy. Nick just wants to do it through normal politics. Okay, I'm sorry. Recently, he has said, and even in your comment, you said, he wants to eliminate Jewish power in the United States. How do you achieve that legally when, as we've seen in demographic Google searches during this very stream, half of the population, worldwide Jewish population, is in Israel? It's around 7 million people. Half of it's in the United States. I'm presuming that they're citizens. So what? You're going to denaturalize 7 million people without violence? You're going to deport 7 million people without violence? Get the fuck out of here. And if you're not going to denaturalize, and if you're not going to deport, then what the fuck are you talking about?
Look, I get it. I mean, I do get it. And I just want to say I love Joe Ken. I get it. Having been denounced by a lot of people I know what that feels like. Mm-hmm. So
we're in 2025. We can ban condoms. We can ban anything we want. You're fucking crazy, man. You're fucking crazy. Let's see how banning condoms. Let's see. That's probably so unpopular. There's probably not even statistics on it. Polls, banning. Let's do pornography. Let's start easy. Let's see how easy it would be to ban pornography in the United States. Polling on banning pornography shows that while a majority of Americans want online pornography to be less accessible, the level of support for an outright total ban is considerably lower. A 2024 analysis of the long-running General Social Survey found that only 28% of Americans favor a total ban. So 3-1, you're getting outvoted on banning online pornography. Banning condoms, polling. I doubt there's even polling that exists. Um, 4 in 5 Americans support legislation protecting contraception. 80% of the population supports laws that protect contraception. Banning contraception polling. 4 in 5 Americans. So not only are you facing a 3-1 in a republic with guns, not only are you facing a 3-1 ban on online pornography, you're facing a 4-1 ban on contraception. That's fucking crazy, bro. And I almost guarantee you, it says 4-1 Americans want to legislate protections for contraception, whereas 4 out of 5 Americans want to legislate protection. I almost guarantee you, even when you get down to that 20%, that's probably split in half between people who want contraception, but they just don't want to legislate it, versus people who want to ban it. So unironically, 90% of the fucking population disagrees with you, Justin. Just to share.
I definitely am sympathetic to that.
Yeah.
It was denounced by someone like last night. I hurt my feelings. You know what I mean? Whatever. I'm not going to say what her name is, but I helped her. I liked her. You know, it's like, why are you denouncing me? Why didn't you call me?
Yeah.
Right?
The argument for banning condoms is just increasing birth rates. That's all it is.
Yeah. Get that. I guess the two problems. But then on the other hand, like one of my favorite people in the world is Glenn Greenwald.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love Glenn.
Oh, what a good man. Glenn must have spent like 10 years attacking me full time. Tucker Carlson is da-da-da-da-da. And he was some of his criticism.
Do you honestly believe Israel wouldn't have an issue with Chinese people becoming a majority in Israel? No, I'm sure they would have a problem. Same way that I would have a problem that if the United States became majority Hispanic, I would probably have a problem. But guess what? I don't have a problem with a plurality. So if Northern Europeans are at 40% and Hispanics are at 30% and blacks are at 13 to 15% and Asians are at 5 to 10% and Jews are at 2%, I don't give a shit. I think we should power share. You know? Now, if we became 90% Hispanic overnight, yeah, of course I got a fucking problem. But I think that people look at a plurality political position and they think it's like death. And I think that's bullshit.
This was correct, actually. You know, a tool of the neocons, endorsing these fucking words. Like, he was right, but he really hated me. And then when we started to agree on stuff, I was like, you know what? It's not about me. I don't care. Like, I don't want personal pique or my hurt feelings to govern my behavior. I guess that's what I'm saying. I'm not lecturing you. I get it. But I feel like, hey, he pissed you off. It's in a campaign. He's got 19 consultants. This kid's a Nazi. Be careful of him. Like, I don't know. Let it go.
Well, and I totally agree with you, by the way. And that's why I don't take it personally at all. Like, and I like.
Justin says, you watch Destiny talk about where he put his penis for hours. I know, but I got to pace myself, bro. I got to pace myself content wise. And also, I don't think we really watch Destiny do that. And as a matter of fact, if you check the VOD, most people are complaining that I'm not watching or paying attention to Destiny enough. But in defense of the topic, that was not about where Steven has sex. That was about whether or not him leaking homemade pornography was worthy of civil punishment. So, you know, a little bit of a difference.
I've said very positive things about you on my show as well. I don't care. And I know, but I mean to say that my goal is America first.
Right.
It's not about me. It's not about my personality. It's about winning for America, you know, and
Right.
by winning, I mean, we want to see our vision realized. But with Joe, for me, it was very specific that he said inclusive populism. And I really.
Dude, he just wants Zionists and Jews and Hispanics and blacks and Asians to feel welcome in his political movement because he thinks that he wants to build a broad base of power. It's not that crazy. If you're in a democracy or in a republic, you build power by having a broad tent and you limit that tent, Nick. I don't think that that's crazy.
Didn't like that. Because to me, there were a lot of similar phrases at this time, multiracial, working class, populism, this kind of stuff. And I said, you know, on some level, we do need to be exclusive, not inclusive. We do need to be right-wing. We do need to be Christian. We do, on some level, need to be pro-white, not to the exclusion of everybody else, but recognizing that white people have a special heritage here as Americans. And so the reason I opposed him in 22 was not because I was mad, but it was to say, America first cannot backslide into this kind of inclusive populist.
Hubie says, I'm probably more extreme than you on this. I don't even like the hyphenated American thing. That's why I say I'm a brown American when people ask me my ethnicity. That's interesting.
A message, which I perceive to be more like GOP slop. And I'll tell you, when he ran again in 24, I did not oppose.
I don't even think that's true. Trump is deporting naturalized citizens who criticize Israel. I don't even think that's true. I think he had multiple deportations against people who were permanent resident aliens and or temporary resident aliens. And I'm pretty sure the permanent resident alien thing got overturned, Justin. I don't even think what you said is true.
I did not oppose him. And I would have supported him if he had reached out or something like that. Because for me, it was very political and professional.
Dude, Christian Blair says, we're on the back foot in reference to training and access to firearms for liberals. Dude, that's what I need to do, man. You know how I was talking about how like the grift would be so easy just to be a fucking right-wing liberal and be like, no, I'm a liberal now, guys. I don't care that Bonnie Blue is banging 1,000 dudes. That's awesome. Girl power. You know, if I just did that, then I could, you know, just join Unfuck America and rake in $1 bajillion. The real grift, which by the way, I'm happy to participate in this grift. The real grift would be teaching liberals how to shoot, making a pro-gun liberal culture. That's the fucking psyop I need to do, bro. That's the psyop I need to do. I need to fucking psyop liberals into loving guns. That's the grift. That'd be so fucking based.
Wanted to impose a cost. If you disavow someone because they criticize Israel, if you disavow someone for talking about white people and Christianity, I said, we can't let that slide because, and you understand why he did it. Like I don't, on some level, I don't hold it against him in the sense that there's such a strong incentive. It's easy to say, I disavow all these crazy Christians and all these crazy white nationalists because it buys you wiggle room with people that are attacking you. It's like easy to throw them under the bus and say, I'm one of the good guys. And so I said, it's too easy. We need to push in the other direction and say, you should feel less comfortable saying that people shouldn't talk about their race and religion. Maybe you'll think twice next time. And so I did it for a very specific reason.
Justin says, we pass laws with consensus all the time. You don't have consensus. Jews won't lose citizenship, nor will they be deported. That's your paranoia. Culture is shifting. What? You simultaneously say, we pass laws using consensus all the time and use violence to arrest those who disobey the laws. Jews won't lose citizenship, nor will they be deported. That's your paranoia. Culture is shifting. What the fuck are you talking about, man? How do you get Jews to lose power without passing a new law? And how do you enforce that law without violence? What the fuck are you talking about, man? If you're just talking about criticizing Israel, listen, I get there was a bunch of fucking right-wingers and Zio shills and Christian evangelicals and all that shit who were like, no, you can't criticize Israel, bro. That's racism, bro. That's anti-Semitism, bro. Trust me, bro. You just can't criticize Israel, bro. I understand the world was like that 5 years ago, 10 years ago. It's not like that now, man. It's popular to hate on Jews. It's popular. Go criticize Israel, man. Nobody gives a fuck. Doobie says, be real. Would you accept that it's just symbolic that the law existed here? I'm assuming you're talking about like the Israeli Jewish first law. I'm assuming you're talking about that. No, I wouldn't. But I think that I grew up in different material circumstances. Yeah. All right, moving on.
And
I get that.
All right, I'm gonna do like one more talking point, then I'm gonna find some new content. And it's not that I don't love this. I do love this. I enjoy it, but I need to break it up into 2-hour VODs.
What I do think is bad, just objectively bad and destructive, is the all Jews are guilty or all anybody is guilty of anything, because that's just like not true. And we don't believe that as Christians. I mean, my hero in life is Paul, as you call him, St. Paul, Saul of Tarsus, a Pharisee, and meets Jesus and becomes this just incredible man, incredibly brave, smart, loving, like everything you want to be as a man. He was Jew.
Yeah.
So like, and God did that to him. So it's like, you can't, I think that's and I don't think it's like mushy liberal bullshit, which I hate. Mm-hmm. I hate all the language.
Outsider the Stranger says, given you say you understand Islam, what are your views on Christian nationalism? It seems all religions have problematic verses, but surely the broad bucket is short-sighted. No. If we look at what I would say, the scripture, I'll admit that, and by the way, I'm really not trying to spark a tangent with Doobie. If you look at Christianity, if you include the Old Testament, the New Testament, and Genesis, and if you view it as a dualist religion where you can justify violence, of course you can justify violence through Christianity. Like all of Christendom, all of medieval Christianity was probably based off of Old Testament, Israeli kingdom bullshit, like interpretations of the Bible that I don't think stand right now. But what I would say is, through the medieval era, through the wars between Protestants and Catholics and Protestants and other Protestants and the settling of the New World and the persecution of various sects and all that kind of stuff, what we ultimately realized is like, okay, well, killing each other doesn't really help. Okay, like you can kill a shitload of Protestants, you're not going to kill all of them. You can kill a shitload of Catholics, you're not going to kill all of them. So ultimately, we just need to say we're either all some vague flavor of Christianity or we're some vague flavor of secular, and let's just go along to get along. And that's just kind of the attitude in the Western world, especially after World War II. World War II with like nationalism, the kind of tribalism that nationalism developed, and then we murdered the shit out of each other. There's just not. America's a relatively bloodthirsty country, but there's just not that much bloodthirst in Europe. I really don't think there's that much bloodthirst in Europe, especially after World War II. Whereas when it comes to Islam, it seems like the violence between Shia and Sunni, the violence against what's that, like one, like kind of like a mystical cult. I forget what they're called, but they're oppressed all over the place. It seems like religious sectarian persecution and ethno-religious rivalry being used to justify mass slaughter. It's just fairly common in the Middle East and North Africa. And so if you look at the stats for Europe, probably since like 1946, and if you look at the stats for and I'm talking about like domestic, I'm talking about like terrorism and shit. If you look at the stats for Japan, Korea, any place under American rule, American influence, and if you look at America and Europe, North America specifically, and then if you look at like ethno-religious, tribal religious purges, probably since 1946, it's probably piss in the ocean compared to the domestic violence. And I mean that like not international violence. I mean like terroristic violence within the Middle East and North Africa. The Middle East and North Africa is all fucked up. It's all fucked up, bro.
That you're describing, I get why it offends you, because it's code for I don't really believe what I'm saying. I have a PhD on the subject, so I know. But I also think there's like a true, not just principle, but like spiritual reality that we have to defend, which is God created every person as an individual, not as a group. No woman gave birth to a community. Like we hate that kind of thinking, right? Collectivist thinking like that. That's identity politics. That's what Dave Rubin engages in. That's what.
Although I don't think Nick fully agrees with this. He might be agreeing with Tucker in the moment, but I don't think he fully agrees with this. I actually do think that he believes in collective identity, but let's see how it flows.
Dave is like just a child. Like you don't pay any attention to Dave because he's like shallow, but we're not going to be that, right? Or no?
No, I completely agree with you. And, like, and not to be that guy and say that thing, but like my best friend is a Jewish person, but here's my substantive disagreement because
It's just obvious as gun talk. Thoughts on the M76 Spear? It's a overinvestment. It's an overinvestment in a simple problem. So the 6 Spear, the 6.8x51 Fury round, is an overinvestment. Tacticon pelvic girdle. So I don't think I can watch this. But there's this guy, Sandalorian, maybe? Sandalorian pelvic girdle. I can't find it. Is the Sandalorian not going to pop? There's a guy who works for Tacticon Armament, and he shoots guns and sandals all the time. The guy's fucking awesome. It's this guy right here. And he does this thing where he's like, hey, 6.8x51. Look, I love Chapel Roan. I love jet bikes. And I love Halo. Classic. Anyways, the Sandalorian, that's not him. Anyways, the that guy he basically just says, shoot him in the dick. That's the fastest way for me to say it. Shoot him in the dick. You could have saved $1 billion if you just told American marksmen to shoot people in the dick. Because 6.8x51 is designed to defeat Chinese and Russian body armor. You don't need to defeat body armor. You need to shoot them in the dick. Anyways, let's do a little summary. I think I'm going to move into the next content. We'll figure out what the next content is momentarily. But in summary, what I heard from Nick Fuentes is that he wanted Donald Trump originally, not because he agreed with him or thought all his policies were great. He just wanted him to crack and destroy the liberal and progressive media establishment because he felt that was necessary for true conservatism to reign supreme. He did talk about the nation state for a second, and I wanted to differentiate the concepts of the nation state. Going into my Microsoft Paint, this is effectively the story that we're at right now, where it seems like Nick was almost recruited into conservative Inc., but by being a geopolitical and anti-Jewish or anti-Israeli contrarian, where he criticized Jewish power, he found that he was consistently attacked, deplatformed, taken on the no-fly list, all this kind of bullshit. And I don't think he's going to admit to like the more extreme positions that he's obviously taken in public. However, what I don't like about Nick Fuentes' political project is I feel like he's trying to reinflame and reinforce the ethno-religious and racial antagonisms of the United States of America, whereas I think that white people, Jews, Hispanic people, black people, Asian people, I think we can all get together as a people and we can say, hey, you know what? Maybe we're not identical in every facet of our lives, but we're still all American. We should still all work together. And the state should be a representation, not exclusively of white interest, not exclusively of black interest, not exclusively of Asian or Jewish or Hispanic or gay or straight or pan or lesbian interest. It should be a representation of our cumulative interest, our aligned interest. And so I view myself as infinitely more Republican, infinitely more liberal with a capital L. Nick Fuentes' origin story. So I'll save this. I might come back and watch this again, especially if it gets more spicy in the second half. But I think that's a decent summary of what's going on with this content. So anyways, parasocial love you guys. Have fun. Enjoy the drama. Bye for now. See you tomorrow morning.